Ass titties.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talkin' Tricks. And today, we have a very special guest. His name is Ayzee. He's a tricker from Tennessee/Kentucky. I know he's going to med school in Kentucky right now. But you heard that right. He's a medical student, third year. And we're going to talk about some things today. So, Ayzee, how you doing?
What's up, man? Doing pretty well. Pleasure to be here, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you on. You're like a longtime friend. I think I remember first meeting you at like Neil long ago, like way before I even considered medical school, and I didn't even hear about you thinking about medical school. You probably did at that time, but
No, not at all. We were like 17, 18 years old, trying to make it through college.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so true. But we're here now, and I am actually curious to talk to you about like finding time to trick, because I consistently get really surprised with like, I mean, you're a third year. That's when you do your clinical rotations. That's when everyone's like, okay, you have no time in your day. Like that's when you're finally like, oh, like fuck, like I gotta, like I have no time to do anything, and I have no life. And yet I still see you post about tricking like very often, actually. And I don't know. I guess my opening question to you is just like, I mean, how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. A lot goes into that question. There's a lot of variables, factors, really. But tricking, for me, especially going into med school, it didn't turn into moreover like a priority that still needed to kind of pursue daily and actively. The perspective I wanted to have on it, and is probably the right way to have on it, is to kind of take it as a hobby, something more of an escape. It was like me going to work out, which I was still regularly able to do, and prioritizing tricking at the same time was moreover, how do I get this escape out of all this stuff that I'm doing throughout the day? I just need an hour to get out and do something. Maybe just roll out around on the grass. It doesn't even have to be double fulls. It doesn't have to be, crazy variations. It just has to be some sort of movement, because our brain needs that. Our body needs it. We can't just be stuffed up in a room all day studying nonstop. About third year, though, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but for me, third year, it gave me a little bit more time. What you do get in third year is consistency. Each month or 6 weeks that start your rotations, what doctor you're going to be working with, what time, what location. So everything's kind of set in order. So I can go ahead and build a schedule ahead of time and see, oh, hey, okay, since I have time Sundays, I can do some of my studying in the morning, kind of have this 2 to 3 hour break midday. I know that's when they allow me to go to sessions over here. So I'll go session, then I'll come back and kind of review at nighttime, start my week off. So really the amount of time did change. So instead of tricking 3 times a week, 2 hour sessions, I was really tricking once a week, maybe, an hour session. And then sometimes getting out on grass every now and then. That was mainly first and second year, where my schedule was crazy. Like, I didn't know my studying schedule was literally all day, and I know you can relate. It's all day.
I was gonna say, was it like all over the place? Because I am very like sporadic with how I like study. I don't really have a set schedule. I'm more just like, today I need to study for 4 hours. I don't know when that's gonna happen. It's gonna happen at some point, and I typically don't know until like an hour before, like, okay, this is my time where I'm going to study or something.
There's different types of studiers, that do different type of techniques that work for them. For me, momentum based works really, really well, because if I get the ball rolling, I can just keep going for hours. But a lot of people need the Pomodoro. They need 25 minutes on, then they need 5 to 10 minutes off, and 25 minutes on, which is great too. But for me, no matter how much I would build a schedule ahead of time, like something would come up, or I would have to do something or want to do something that would be like, hey, you know what, this chunk of work and time I'm just going to put to later, and this period of time I'm just going to chill, or go eat or trick or do whatever. So doing that first and second year was really tough. Third year, with a consistent schedule, I can kind of plan it out ahead of time. It's given me a little bit more time to really trick and do the things that I want. For example, I'm on my psychiatry rotation right now. Most of my days end at 1 p.m. Literally 1 p.m. I'm done.
Oof.
So I come home, I review all the things from the day, and then I go through my step studying, all the things that would be pertinent to boards. And then the rest of the night, I really have off to just do whatever I want, to go work out, to trick, whatever I need.
Wow.
But at the end of the month, it changes because at the end of the month, I have my shelf exam. So that last 2 weeks, maybe I won't go work out and trick as much. So it kind of fluctuates here and there. But in short, to answer your question, how did I find time? You will find time. You will have to prioritize your health, your mental health, and your physical health. You can't sit in a room and study all day. It will bring you down. And it did. On days that I didn't work out, that I didn't trick, that I didn't have freedom of expression or creativity, my brain was boxed. It only thought in very linear, boxed up ways versus, how can I think out of the box, make different connections?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think those things are very important to help us and aid us in our goals and priorities.
Yeah.
So
I think there's another half of this question that's still needs a really good answer, because this is sort of speaking to the how do you physically continue to make your body go out and trick even though you've got so many other work constraints. But Frank also mentioned that not only do you obviously trick, but you also post about it.
Yeah,
that is two different things.
So well, and I think they're both important aspects of what's going on. I don't think they're two different things. I think they're two halves of the same coin right now. We've got the sort of personal athletic, all right, how are you developing the will to keep going? And what it comes down to, as you said, Ayzee, is, well, it's not so much the will, it's you kind of need it. And going without it is not good for you. How now do you find the time to make sure that you're actually consistently contributing to the community still? Because that's also something you're actively still doing. And this is something that I would like to know, because I never stopped tricking when I went off to start my graduate program, but I have always been someone who didn't post very frequently, and I certainly don't post basically anything now. So getting some tips is always good.
That's a good question. How do I find time to post, really, and still care and give into the community? I don't know how much I'm really contributing to the community. I mean, maybe just with the love of the movement, which is true. But I don't know. I mean, even before med school, going into healthcare and working in healthcare, I always thought that tricking was a part of it. And I want to continue to give back to the community as much as it has given me. You'll hear stories about how people really fight depression, fight a lot of demons, and come out from the other side with tricking, which is great. And I had a good deal of that myself. But I want to give back to it. Like, I want to make sure my focus is still around it. Another thing I want to do is make sure I do inspire people that it doesn't have to be just one thing. Like, you can do multiple things if you want it and still enjoy the art of movement. It doesn't have to be limited in its own thing, that like, if you're only a tricker, if you only work on, being a movement artist and work in that industry, then you can post about it. Then you have the time to post about it. Honestly, I didn't have time, but the nights I did, put up a quick video together of the few tricks that I did 2 days ago, and just kind of throw whatever music was trending or whatever music I like and just throw it on. That's one thing, though, that I did change perspective on. Posting before that time frame, I was very nitpicky about, like, okay, this video has to be perfect. It has to catch the audience. It has to have the music. It has to hit the beat right on the kick, But kind of pushing through a lot of med school and not having time to do a lot of things, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to put out what I like, And I think with social media, we have we carry a lot of weight of people's opinions and the weight of people's likes and, there's judgments. So being able to let go of that and just post, whatever I wanted, that was a little freeing.
Sorry. I really like that, especially because I think that kind of gives everybody a better idea of what your process as a tricker is, way more so than the previous sort of glitzed and glammed. I'm only going to show you the highlights.
Yeah, exactly.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
I too appreciate that,
Mhm.
AZ, because I literally don't post because I'm like, oh, this isn't, good enough or whatever. Even though I'm like, I would love to post this, but it's not quite there yet or something,
Mhm.
But I think that your approach is a lot healthier than,
Mhm.
holding back and stuff.
It's hard to have that approach. And maybe we're gonna get into this later, but tricking is based a lot on social media. It grew, its adolescence, all of it kind of grew in tandem with the growth of social media. So a lot of it is attached with it, be it Instagram, social media, or Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. So we do have to think about those implications. Even I don't know, even some of the standard that we feel like we need to hold ourselves to because other people are tricking so well and doing so well on social media, we kind of look at that and we're like, why am I not doing that? And we lose sight of like, what were my goals? What were my priorities in life? Where you're only thinking about how butthurt you are that you don't have a snafu,
Yeah, me and Jason have actually talked about this very topic about like there's not enough of the quote unquote fails or not as good things posted, so you get a very like provincial view of like what tricking actually is. Like you don't see what the fails are like, so it's really frustrating when you do fail. You know what I mean? So, but I really like that point that you brought up about like not being as nitpicky because like Jason, that was a struggle for me as well. And I've recently learned to get a little better at that. Like I had one session, I just recorded like 5 clips and I was like, I don't even care. These are tricks I've done before, but like I'm going to put them together and I'm going to post it and it's going to be fun. And it's also funny that you bring that up because I'm not a very artsy person. But something I've noticed as of late is that sometimes some of the best artists are like not as nitpicky and attention to detail as like I guess the broader community at large likes to think, if that makes any sense. Like obviously there are those artists that they are very meticulous and very specific about where each brushstroke is, but a lot of times I've noticed that like they just kind of do shit. Like they just kind of make some brush marks, they just kind of, but yeah, I've noticed that they're not as like I guess attention to detail as much as they're more paying attention to the broader picture of what it's going to look like at the end. And I've noticed that's almost made like a better artist at the end.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I think we're naturally, this might have to do with some laws of attraction. We're probably naturally attracted to that anyways, because it really shows someone's inner personality rather than, what they're trying to put out versus what they just want to do. And you can see that. And I'm certainly attracted to it. I want to bring up the Kizzard, for example. I don't know exactly how you, but he does his own thing. He's got his style. He's been true to his own style for a bit, and it's got him the recognition he needed without him trying to be anybody else.
Yeah, that's so true. Without the standard in tricking where it's like you need exactly these straight lines and these things, and you need I don't know, double full. I mean, he could dub actually now, so that doesn't even count anymore, but like you need triple cork in order to be like a big name tricker or something,
Right.
So
yeah. So I mean, Bryce, to just circle back around and just in short, how do I keep the motivation to trick and then actually post? I think it has a lot to do with tricking. It's once I did it or twice I actually went and worked out and I actually tricked and tried to put that in my schedule. How I felt afterwards really helped me in the future do it again because it motivated me. I knew I felt better. I knew that my body needed that in order to function at an optimal level. And then with social media, it at least gives me an outlet to other people that, hey, it's hard for me, but I'm still able to do multiple things. And if you look at some of my captions, they're moreover about just living in the moment of it, and just trying to do your best to free yourself as much as possible. And yeah, you have these, strict life goals, but we don't have to stay in that. We can, dip a little out of it and do something for ourselves every now and then,
I like you emphasizing the doing something for yourself there, because that's something that I've also learned to, I guess, learn. Me and Jason kind of grew up in a time in tricking where like everyone was just going for power moves and like you were kind of nothing if you didn't go for power moves. And I think me and Jason, we've talked about this, have somewhat based our self-worth on that. Growing up in tricking, and especially since I started like late high school, early college, I mean, that was all I did was trick. So like I was able to progress to a level, but then when it came down to doing the things I wanted to do in life, sometimes tricking took the back burner, and that did affect like kind of my perception of myself, because I was like, oh well, I'm not doing this and this. So
That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, you know, and you can get that from your own community, around your personal group of tricking, you know, homies, friends, but, you know, you also get that from social media a lot too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I just like the idea of like, it's okay to age in tricking. It's okay to have an adult job. It's okay to only train like, you know, 2 hours a week, if that. Like,
Yep.
you know, it could be a hobby, and that's fine. So
Everybody gets to have that young monster phase where they have literally nothing to do and no money. So yeah, they can just sit there and trick for hours and hours and hours a day.
Yeah.
But at some point, yeah, we just, you know, that it's all right that you have to go and deal with adults' responsibilities, because it doesn't mean tricking vanishes from your life.
Right.
And frankly, by the time you're old enough to be in this position, I doubt that you have the bodily or the ability to have your body withstand training like you used to as a youngin.
I mean, Dennis Franco kind of throws that out of the water personally. He's like 28 now or something, doing triple ABCs. I don't know. But sorry, were you going to say something, Ayzee?
Oh, no, you're good. No, I was just going to say, yeah, no, that's true. I mean, as much as we want to believe that we are, you know, indestructible, and, you know, to an extent we are. We really limit ourselves with our mind a lot, but we're humans. We got these little bones that they're going to start breaking down on us eventually, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But-
If we train smart, though, we can really have that stay like very, very far off into the future, to the point where it's something that, yeah, I've seen really, really old gymnasts, and gymnastics is specifically not done in a way to be, you know, ergonomic, to be good to your joints. It's done in a way specifically so that judges give you higher points. So if they can pull that shit off, I'm certain we can figure it out with our ability to literally decide how our technique is done on the fly.
Sure, I 100% agree. Yeah, and I wanted to make sure I said that too, after saying that, you know, we do degrade, you know, through life, unfortunately. But the thing is, we can prolong that for sure, with the tools that we have around us, with the knowledge we have around us. But it's there's no quick way to do it, though. There's no shortcuts. You know, like everything that's worth it in life, it takes time, it takes work, it takes working out your VMO muscles and doing some knees on the toes, doing some, you know, some trick strong PT.
Yeah, love me some VMOs. I agree. I think that's really, I mean, as a former athletic trainer, that was big for me, is like, there is a very defining point in my tricking career, which was before athletic training and after athletic training. And before athletic training, I was very reckless. I was destroying my body every day. I was always in pain. After athletic training, I was a lot more mindful about how I trained and what I did outside of training as well, and like my stretching. And that has just made all the difference personally. So definitely check out Trick Strong for that. Shameless plug here, even though I have nothing to do with it. But
I really think everyone should be on that train. I think every single person who does, you know, movement at this capacity and at this pressure, like we should be doing those workouts in tandem. I'm talking to everyone that thinks, you know, like they see Trick Strong and they're like, or maybe even knees or toes or anything on the internet, and they're like, oh, you know, I can do a dub. I'm fine. I don't need to work on it. No,
tricking is not enough exercise to prepare your body to do tricks.
Yeah, and that's fine. You can do it right now, but like, hey, the amount of stress we're putting it in, and any littlest minute movement, you know, and your body isn't ready for it, and blam, you would have wished you'd done a few workouts to strengthen that muscle.
Yeah.
So I think every single person should be on that, you know, a consistent training program to strengthen the muscles that will aid in their tricking and prevent them from injuries.
The lack of that is actually something, it's kind of a holdover from old school culture. It's encapsulated. I don't remember where this video is, but it's a video of Micah Carnes giving a workout at Jam, I believe. And he basically says somewhere in there that adding strength training to your tricking exercise is not necessary, because you could achieve the exact same thing through timing. Essentially, you don't necessarily need to be strong. If you have all of your moves timed exactly right, you can be a pretty weak motherfucker and still get through a whole lot of really hard tricks. And that is absolutely true. But it's kind of like there's this really big elephant in the room, which is, if you do everything exactly perfectly, you don't need to be very strong and your body will be fine. The second something goes even just the tiniest bit wrong,
and that's something we don't control. That's like there's like a lot of freak accidents, like, you know,
our bodies would be better ready for it, though.
Exactly, and they should be, and that's really, in my opinion, that's the purpose of strength training in tricking. It's not necessarily to give you the ability to go and pull more height so you can have more time for your dub or your trip, though it will definitely do that. It's in my opinion, it's for that longevity factor that you were bringing up.
Right. No, I totally agree. You know, he's spot on with that, with the timing, with the correct timing of when to contract, when to release, when to relax, and really hold something in. Like, you could be the scrawniest, you know, the weakest person and do it. That's not a problem. You know, momentum is beautiful, gravity and physics are beautiful. But the thing is, the moment you kick just one too high on the third cork, and, you know, you came down and your toes hit, your heels hit, and you're like, whoa, I'm just a little bit higher than I thought. And then, boop, your knee's going backwards. And you're like, whoa, I didn't really expect that.
And I don't have the quad, I don't have the hamstring, I don't have all of my muscles surrounding my knees strong enough to just prevent that from happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting that we bring this specific point up, because right now it's hard for me to get to a gym, so I probably train once every 2 weeks, if that, because the closest gym is in New Jersey.
That was my same.
Yeah, it's not the greatest. During the winter, it's really bad because obviously there's snow on the ground. I can't really find a place to trick. But something that I realize is that, I mean, I also work out at the gym, and if I work out at the gym, it's a lot easier to come right back to tricking and just like spring right back to action versus if I never did. That being said, you were also talking about how when it gets closer to exam days, you kind of taper down, for, like, you know, your priorities switch a little bit, which, you know, is kind of a normal thing. And I've noticed the same thing. But something I've done to really not combat that, but like, obviously, you know, the week before an exam, I'm really focused on the exam. But I get antsy sometimes. I'm like, I want to just leave my desk. I want to do something physical. I literally just go walk in the park that's right there. I go like a 5-mile walk. I do some flashcards while I'm doing it, so I'm getting studying in while I'm also still, like, walking is amazing for you. Like, it's surprising, like, the health benefits you get from it. So it's like I'm not letting my muscles atrophy or, you know, decondition. You know, I'm not necessarily building a shit ton of muscle, but at the very least, like, my conditioning isn't going away. And I'm just wondering if you had something similar to that, or I don't know.
No, 100%. And, you know, it's interesting you bring that up, because around that same time I was researching some of this, and, you know, why days that I go out and actually do something, even if it's for 30 minutes to an hour, and I come back and I feel even better, I'm even more motivated to go ahead and finish off the day with the task that I had lined up to do. And there's a lot of research on it, the way our neurochemistry works. And, you know, when we get away from our task-oriented self and then just get out and see nature, you know, see the leaves, see the sky, breathe the fresh air, that change up in itself, that change up of the scene, our brain just kind of takes a break to recircuit itself, to, you know, just renew itself a little bit. So when you come back, the ideas that will flow in, the connections that you can make are just so much stronger. And I, you know, I can link you some of this research later. I can't think of it on the top of my head, but, you know, basically research regarding, you know, giving time to yourself to do something else and then coming back to studying or your task. Yeah, I did that a lot. There were times where I got so sick of it at the desk that I would just, you know, have to leave. And it doesn't even have to be tricking, you know, just go on a walk. My main thing was going to the gym, working out, you know, staying fit, but maybe I'd go for 45 minutes if it's that last week instead of, you know, a full hour or hour 15 minutes. But what I would do is go for, you know, 40 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes, go to the racquetball room, do a bunch of cheat 9s, do a bunch of cheat 7s, do some B twists, and I just did some tricking, you know. And in that moment, I mean, sure, it was 5 to 10 minutes, but I wasn't thinking about school. I wasn't thinking about other people's opinions of me. I wasn't thinking about my tasks or all the responsibilities on my shoulder. The only thing I was thinking about was twisting over, landing on my feet, doing it again, and just having a good time while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And that, in a way, rewired my brain to go back into to studying better than any way. Better than some days I would go play basketball for 5 to 10 minutes. Some days I would go on a walk, or just go chill in the grass under a tree or whatever. Yeah, very similar experiences for sure. And you'll notice first year, I don't know how your program works, but first year basic sciences, once those kind of trickle away, second year it definitely got a lot more tough for me with the amount of things that were going on, and with leadership, with research and everything as well.
Yeah.
So then more than ever did I have to kind of try to plan. And like you said, I wasn't tricking even once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, especially when it was close to my block exam. Maybe I'd just go work out and at the end throw a few kicks and tricks and come home and be like, all right, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But that became so important to me to do well, you have no idea. So like, in a way, tricking has been helping me throughout the process.
Absolutely. I think the benefit there lies in the fact that, like, when you trick, you need your full focus. Like, you can't screw anything up. You know what I mean? You're in the air.
You'll hear the definition of flow state, and obviously we pair it with tricking all the time, but really thinking about it, like, that is the ultimate flow state. Like, in the moment, I am not concerned with anything else but what my movement is, and that's it. And that's very freeing. It really is.
Exactly. So, and I agree. I have a workout partner that I just got him into working out. So we've been going to the gym together like 5 times a week. And something that he's expressed to me is like, dude, like, the days we don't work out, I just can't study. Like, it's so hard for me to get into studying.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's something I didn't even notice because, I mean, I've always, tricked and done movements like all throughout college. I didn't even realize that it was helping me in a way to study. And like him saying it, like, it made it so much more clear now that, like, there are days where I just don't do movement. It is a lot harder those days to do anything. So
that factors right into what Bryce was asking. How do you keep that motivation up to keep doing that? And it's because it feels so good. It literally helps. It helps me.
It's like self-rewarding.
Yeah. It makes me feel better. It makes me do better. I feel more motivated. I can't put my finger on exactly why that is, and maybe it's because of some of that rewiring, some of that creative outlet. But it is. And then even getting on social media and putting my clips together or watching other people's clips, like, the enjoyment I get out of it, it's very freeing.
yes.
And and that's why I love tricking in general, even watching tricking or doing it myself. And that's what I kind of had to transition my perspective into, enjoying other people's tricking a lot more, and not always making it about me. I think trickers, we get into that state eventually that do that. Oh, well, I can do this. I bet this person can't do that. Like, why are you thinking about that? Let's just focus on me. What do I want? What do I need? What are my goals in my life?
It's funny you bring that up too, because something I noticed before I did talk and tricks was that I was honestly starting to get a little jaded with tricking. Like, I would see Shosei do big stuff, and I'm like, okay, like, whatever, that's like a huge thing. Like, what's new? And like, I would see other people do it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's not Shosei, so like, whatever. I was really starting to get jaded. It was actually really bad. And something I noticed with talk and tricks and dissecting tricks and understanding what tricks people were doing, I get so much more excited about samplers now. Like, me and Jason have a series where we watch a sampler, we tell you what every single trick is in it. Last night, we just watched Donovan Sheehan, and, like, holy shit. Like, some of the stuff he was doing, I was like, what the hell? Like, this is amazing.
I love a comeback.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
For freestyle martial arts, though, not for tricking.
Oh, right. It's freestyle.
He doesn't. Donovan doesn't trick. He freestyle martial arts.
Yeah. That's right. I forgot about that. But, yeah, I mean, Ayzee, you brought up earlier when we were talking about the social media thing, you were like, I'm not sure how much I provide to the tricking community, but, I mean, we've also talked about this in a separate episode, but every tricker, like, contributes to the community by showing their own tricks, because that inspires at least someone, maybe even just a little bit, to do maybe a trick a certain way. And you have a very unique style, in my opinion. I really love your style, so I think you are doing a great job of inspiring people. But more so than that, I think you're doing a great job of inspiring people like me who, like, I remember when I was about to go to college, and I'm like, I was like thinking about posting on the tricking page being like, hey, is it even possible to be in college and trick? Because like I really didn't know. Like I was just like, is that something you can find time to do? Because like if that's so, like I'd rather just trick. And like I remember being so nervous about it, and then seeing people who were in undergrad, who were in grad school, who did do all this stuff trick. I was like, okay, wait, I can do both these things and it's fine. So yeah.
That's exactly, and again, goes back to Bryce's question. Like I like to be able to do that, to be able to portray that, hey, you know, you can dabble in multiple things in life, but sometimes we do have to prioritize a few things. But it doesn't mean you just give up everything. You know, it doesn't mean, since that can be your number one, it can't be something on the side that you still love and do and contribute to and, you know, share with other people. And that's what we do. Tricking, we share a lot of it with other people. But yeah, no, I agree, and that makes me feel great. That means if I've affected one person, then I can die peacefully. Really, that's all it takes from me. You know, when we're trying to have an impact on the outside world, you know, it first starts with yourself. You know, start with yourself. What are you changing in yourself, in your perspectives, your heart, to be a better person, and what you want to see in other people. And then you start with the people closest to you, or the people, you know, that you can reach primarily. And even if it's to one person, then you've made a difference. At least in my opinion, I've made a difference. So that means, you know, all of the years of Instagram, and I guess, you know, if it inspired you even a little bit, then I've done my job.
I could guarantee you've inspired more than me. So yeah, thank you for that.
No, you brought up another good point though, of just I think the reason I was able to take more of a creative outlook on tricking, I mean, I'm no Jordan, but the reason why is because I had to, you know, I'm sure when you were training, a lot of your power moves, your triple fulls, your quads, whatever you were doing, if you were spending a lot of time. You were spending a lot of physical, you know, time. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. A lot of your own physical, you know, stress, a lot of your, you know, time, especially a lot of your sweat and tears, however you will. But I kind of had to transition out of that because I realized I didn't have time and blood and sweat to put into that. So what am I going to do to still feel, you know, how I want to feel good, to feel like I was still doing my movement and not have to do that? Well, just focus on what I like to doing that doesn't require that. What is that? Combining a bunch of, you know, creative, even just floor work, you know, or just groundwork, or working with levels, you know, starting up with some kicks, doing some groundwork, finishing up with a variated cork, you know. If I have fun throughout that combo and I felt good, then it was great. Then that's all that matters to me. I had to stop looking at it from other people's eyes and being like, oh, you know, that's not the standard we're tricking at anymore. I don't really care. You know, why are we tricking for in the first place? Am I tricking for you? Am I tricking for me? I think, in my opinion, it's a combination of both. You know, we are tricking for everyone else. We're tricking for us, but it doesn't have to be 100% about everybody else. It's got to be about you.
And I don't even think. I think you are tricking for other people, but I don't necessarily think that you're tricking for 100% of other people.
Exactly.
I think there are, in the same way that when you were growing up in tricking, there were those trickers who reached out and inspired you.
Yep.
They were tricking for you, even if they didn't mean to. And I think that's the way you're tricking for other people in that sense. And you've sort of been alluding to that as you've been talking as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's okay, you know, being able to trick for other people, being able to trick for yourself. The problem lies where we start holding negative thoughts and, you know, trying to direct those at ourselves or other people, especially because we feel like we're lesser than other people because we can't do something. That's not true. I mean, even if you can back tug, you're like 1% of the population, bro. Like, you're killing it, you know?
That's so true.
It's so hard to keep in mind, you know, with today's like social media climate, I would say. But yeah, that's another thing that I like to remind myself of. This is one of my very first tricks that I wanted to learn when I got into tricking was front flip. And like now front flip's no issue, you know, like that I can do that whenever, and it's easy to take that for granted. when you've kind of surpassed like those early goals and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna use it no issue. I bet you're almost slightly embarrassed to admit that at one point you valued front flip really highly.
I still value front flip very highly. As Frank, I if I see front fulls, I'm like, that's instantly cooler than back full. 100%.
That's interesting.
Birdies, bring 'em on.
Most trickers I've met like absolutely despise front flips.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they're so
I know that's because
awkward.
no one. I love them because no one does them, and I think they need greater representation.
Oh man, you're such a front twister.
I am such a front twister.
I'd like to see twisting combos that had all of the various twists in them and not just fulls and quirks. So yeah, including front fulls, including A twists and stuff. A twists are coming along. People are doing them more often.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A twister guy.
That's like Jason's favorite move besides Callie.
Yeah, truth.
Which is pretty fucking awesome. though.
Reminded me of I don't know if you guys knew Taylor Presley. He was tricking back in the day. Taylor Rain Presley. He's like a shorter guy, gymnast
Sounds
in his
familiar.
days. But he came to Neo 1 and 2 with me.
Mm.
I know a really long time ago. So Frank, maybe you would have met him.
I was at Neo
But,
too.
He was like one of the first people to be chucking double front flips at gatherings. And then he was the first one to do double backflip in the little tricker house in Ohio as well.
That's
I don't know if you guys
Nice.
Ugh.
Yeah, but he loved front flipping, and he was like one of the few trickers that I saw that was like always chucking double front flips, and I was like, double front flips.
Yeah, that's fucking dope. Double front flip is like the coolest shit, and I think it's always awesome whenever any trigger busts out a double front.
Yeah, and he slammed it in the gathering when he was trying to do it, and I was just like, dude, I know this guy. What's going on?
That's just ridiculous. Everyone's losing their minds because, of course, they are.
Right.
Yep.
Well, it's so
Yeah.
biomechanically awkward that it's like front flip really is impressive because you got to
Well,
have
it's-
like
It's one of those tricks where like the process of going from not being able to land it to being able to land it is absolutely the way you slam your heels into the ground when you fuck up a double front flip
Yeah.
is catastrophic. So you have to go from not being able to land it to being able to land it in a pretty brief window in order
Yeah.
to pull that one off successfully.
So initially, when you're even training, let's say you don't have much aerial awareness, you're pretty new to tricking. Doing a front flip versus learning a back flip or back tuck, in my experience, even coaching growing up, I felt that kids obviously love throwing front tucks, but they always got back tucks faster. In my personal experience. I know it works different for everybody. I personally landed front tuck first, then I landed back tuck.
I witnessed that back tuck versus front tuck phenomena in all the students that I coached.
Yeah, and all your students. And I think it's partially because, when we do a back tuck, I'm able to, teach them how to set properly and then watch and spot for the floor and then look forward, land, all that good stuff. So it's very spotted. It's very, visual. But front tuck is kind of like, it's hard for us to really think about where we are. It's kind of blind when we're first starting off. And we're just kind of chucking, we're seeing like a ray in the sky of like some lights, and then we're just trying to land on our feet versus the back tuck.
There's also a little bit of physics involved too when it comes to what you're able to use to propel your rotation in a front tuck versus a back tuck. In a front tuck, generally you're using your arms and your chest to a small amount your chest, but you're using your arms primarily. So you're bringing your arms down from up very high above you with your lats. And your arms are only so heavy, and your lats are, they're pretty strong. They're pretty big muscles on your body.
Mhm.
But when you compare that to what you got for a back tuck, you get to use your abs to pull your legs all the way up over you. So your legs are much heavier than your arms. You've got a lot more momentum in them.
and
So-
your hip flexors too because you're
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
your knees to your chest.
There's a lot of muscles on your anterior chain that you're using.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing a front flip, you are essentially contracting your lats to get your arms down, and that's it.
Yeah.
Anterior chain gang.
It's always been my perspective that front flip is like harder to land in terms of difficulty, but just easier to throw because it's more approachable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you kind of just throw it.
Yeah.
What's there to really think about in a front flip?
Right.
But like with a back flip, it's got that intimidation factor that
Yes.
holy shit,
Wait.
have like that go backwards and everything. So
Well, a lot of us growing up, we do somersaults or front rolls or forward rolls all throughout our lives and kids and our youth, but we don't really do much backward rolls. Like I remember So I coached for like 7-8 years, right? And I worked with beginners all the way up to advanced tumbling, and I promise you, every single time in my beginners class, all these kids can front roll to some degree, but not a single one of them know how to backward roll because they never do it. They just don't. That's not something that you naturally do. So then later in life, let's say I get a 17, 18-year-old who just signed up for privates and they're like, oh, I just want to do a back tuck, and they're like, oh, I've been doing front flips and front rolls my entire life. I can do this, but back tuck, I just never even, thought about, like, oh my God, going over myself. Well, have you ever tried a backward roll? Let's start with that.
Right.
And then we can work through the progressions of, setting and using all our tools.
Getting up onto a box and all those things.
All the good stuff, yeah. But I do think, front flip, when I first started, it was me, like Jason said, I was just kind of chucking it, and then I just could see a line of light, and I would just be like, oh, I guess I jumped up and landed. But then with back tuck, it was such like a intricate process. Like I had to set and watch my set. I had to pull my hips up and watch them come up. And then I would look for the floor and I would see the floor and be like, oh, look, that's where my feet go. Bam. It was a whole process that made sense. But with front tucks, it was just like, all right, chuck and pray and land. And then eventually, now I could tell you, exactly.
You start to develop some technique for it.
Yeah. Now I can tell you exactly where I'm at, what I'm doing, but like then it was like a totally different thing. Yeah. But what were we talking about?
I mean, I was just gonna say we should just scrap the idea of the time and tricking. We should just talk about front flips, back flips, just the whole episode.
Literally hijack this whole thing for forward flips.
No, it does correlate. So, like, for example, Jason, like, say you were working, your next skill you were working was just a round off double back or a double full or something, but you were using a front tuck, step out, round off, double full, right? And that's what you're working on. Every single time you did a front tuck, step out, you did a round off, hit the 1.5, and you were just falling. There's another kid on the other side of the gym that's watching you and is like, God, I just have been praying for the last year that I could just land that front tuck, just watching you.
Yeah.
You're in your head over there killing yourself because you're like, God, I cannot. I suck. Shosei's already doing standing pull-ups. I'm over here. I can't even do this. You're killing yourself, and that kid is over there watching you, and he's killing himself because he can't do a front tuck.
Oh, yeah.
But it puts in perspective that, like, we're doing great. We've come a long way. We have a lot to be grateful for. But it shouldn't pull away from the motivation to keep going. For example, if you're still pushing for that double full, it doesn't. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that motivation and that that push for ourselves to keep wanting to do more, to do better, but also to be able to put things in perspective and not get super frustrated, but rather grateful. Like, okay, you know what? I put in enough time today. I worked the tech. I learned a few things. Let's move on to a different trick, or let's end the session off right there before I get hurt.
Yeah. No. Sorry.
Being able to make that second decision is critical.
Yes.
100%. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes even if you're not. I think sometimes you should probably push through it, but I'm pretty bad. But when you feel like that's just not there, the session just isn't right. Knowing when to call it off, you're saying, and just making the smart decision to just cut your losses basically.
I feel like I've gotten a lot. That's a skill you develop over tricking. I feel like I've gotten a lot better about listening to my body and knowing when my body is done, and I feel like I've definitely gotten less injuries as a result of that. I mean, if I'm tricking and I have one vague hyperextension kind of feeling going on, I'm like, you know what? Just not going to do swings today. I'm just not,
Trickers are usually as good at that as they are at front flips.
Right, of course.
I'm great at front flips, Bryce. What are you talking about?
I think a good way to maybe gauge it, let's say you were working on TDR double cork and you saw that you're at the max of your capacity, you're worked up, you're done, and you're still chucking this. If you notice in the last 3 attempts that you did the same thing and changed nothing or did something worse, probably a good sign to go ahead and work on something else or just stop. Because if you're not going to change anything or learn from it and go back to the drawing board, maybe go back to the pit and study it a little bit more, then come back or anything, and if you're doing the same thing over and over and just having that hard impact on the floor, maybe go back to the drawing board, maybe switch it up, maybe work on something else, maybe end the session there. maybe come back next week or the next time with a new gain knowledge, with a new energy, with a new motivation, and then tweak it and fix it, and maybe do it at the start of session.
It's
But
always better to come back to it than it is to cement in a really bad habit. I actually had this problem for a while with Rise River Sow. There were periods of time where I could not work on it. I'm someone who it takes me a really long time to get a trick and get good at it because I can only really tweak it little bits at a time. But I just had this issue for the longest time with River Sow where I'd be going great with it, and then all of a sudden I would just start twisting. I would go all the way around for a rise, but not mean to, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And that was the signal every time it was happening that I had to stop doing it from that point. Because if I kept doing it, the next time I tried to do it at a session, I would have the same problem but worse because I had just drilled that issue.
Also is, I totally agree. That happens to all of us. I think another thing of it is our thoughts and our mental clarity gets very clouded because then we start thinking and moving from emotion rather than technical work.
Absolutely. I definitely could feel my frustration with my inability to stop myself from twisting, making future.
Yeah, you're right. And when your frustration or your anger or your anxiety or something takes control of your body, when you really need to be in control of your body, that's when you can get hurt as well. Because you're not in the driving seat, you're not controlling every single movement. And that's when, even if you've been told by Micah Carnes that, just do the things that you need to and you'll be all right, but if you get that mental clouding in mid-trick even, and you're like, oh, and then just step wrong, probably should have done a few extra trick strong seminars.
Those ankles around a little bit.
I had a similar rule to what you were talking about earlier, Ayzee, in terms of like whenever I'm throwing like big power moves, like let's say I'm going for a cart trip or whatever, if I'm inching closer and closer to cart trip, I'll keep doing it. But the moment like that goes back down, I just like stop doing it. Maybe it's a little too skittish, but like the moment there's a drop off in like how I was improving with that, I'm like, okay, well now it's just gonna start to be not great. So I'm not gonna do it. And I feel like that saved me from a few injuries too. So
and it doesn't mean that you have to completely end there too. Let's say you're really good at double full hypers. Why not just end the session off with a few more double full hypers, transition to a cart full, double full, and then just end it there, and then come back next week and be like, okay, double full hypers were again. Even at the end of session when I was done ski, they were still kind of easy. Let's start with that and let's transition into triple pulls once again. But you're right, it is a skill that takes time to develop, to be able to tell like, hey, what is my body feeling? What do I need to do? It takes time.
It's gonna look different for everyone too. So that's why you kind of have to like listen to your body. So, okay, we're nearing like the 15-minute mark, but I did have like another thing I want to talk about, and that's like something that I've noticed with bringing people into tricking is that sometimes I'll bring people into tricking, and they will be like too busy to trick, and that's valid reason. Like don't get me wrong, like some people like legitimately are too busy to trick, but I definitely am in like the personal belief that like if you really want to do it, you will find time at some point to at least get a little bit in. And I think that's interesting in terms of like an anecdote that Jason was telling me earlier when he was talking to Kojo. He was like, yeah, Kojo would like bike 5 miles to the gym and like go to trick and then bike 5 miles back, or he'd be tricking under a dirty bridge and like just kicking up dirt and like, but that's how he got his training in because he had nowhere else to go. And I think that people who really still want to trick are gonna find a way to get it done or to fit it into their schedule.
Yeah, it's easy to find excuses when your heart's not in it, like if you really don't want to go to the session, you'll find a reason not to, like, oh, it's raining, it's whatever. I guess it's not a bedroom session where you can only do like certain kicks or something, it's like it's all or nothing, sometimes or at least you can feel that way.
Yeah,
but
no, it that makes total sense. And I mean, I've already told you, my experience. It was completely opposite for me, where if I didn't do it, I would be hurting my education. I wouldn't be performing at the level I wanted to. Sure, obviously I had to prioritize. That doesn't mean I'm spending, time daily tricking. It just means when I can, I should, because I know it helps me. you know, whether that's tricking, whether that's painting, whether that's, you know, doing yoga, whether that's just walking outside, it doesn't matter. But specifically, we're talking about tricking, and that's how I found time, I guess, because I knew my body needed it, and I knew even if it was 15 minutes, that's sufficient. If it's an hour, even better. And then going on social media and posting it to tell people, hey, like, it's hard. It's been hard out here, but like I had a session today, and this is how it went.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really it. And if we can inspire other people to be like, you know, I guess I do have time, but because really we do. If you cut out all the time that we do work, that we sleep, and you know, outside of those like necessities, we do have plenty of time. It's what we do with that time. Do we sit there, you know, and do nothing, play video games or watch bullshit, or do we, you know, work on ourselves? You know, do we do that we want to do?
I think that's a very salient point, because I think that the people that do tend to find the excuses typically do have time that they're doing other things, like, you know, watching Netflix or doing something else. Like, not saying that, you know, you should watch Netflix every once in a while because it's fun, but like, you know, there is time that you're setting aside for other things that you could be setting aside for tricking. And so like my advice for people getting into tricking, or even actually just anything in general, anything physical, is that it typically requires some activation energy to begin with. It's probably going to suck at the beginning. It's probably not going to be nearly as fun. And it's going to take you a while to learn your first skill, or to get to the point where you can combo or whatever it might be, or lift, you know, heavier at the gym. But eventually, getting past that activation energy, it will be like way worth it, basically.
Absolutely. And tricking is just like working out at a gym, in the sense that if you show up on your first day of lifting and try to bench press 300 pounds, you're just in for a world of hurt. So you don't need to show up your first week of tricking and have hour-long sessions. In fact, even years into tricking, you don't need to have, you know, an hour-long session is great because it gives you lots of time to work on things and take breaks and stuff in between the stuff you're working on to recover properly. But if you just practiced your basics for like 15 minutes, that would be good too. Like, that's regularly practicing your basics for 15 minutes would pay dividends. I promise.
Pay dividends.
I'll tell you what, man. I don't know.
Seeing your ROI shoot through the roof.
I'll tell you what. I don't know why, but this reminded me of young Levi. I met him a while ago when he was, you know, just a kid in Florida. And it was at Trick Hungry actually.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, while other people who've been tricking for years, you know, and they could do a solid combo, I guess. I'm not trying to like down anybody. But everyone's beautiful in their own ways, okay? But I'm talking about people who spent years, you know, in their craft and gotten to a certain level, whereas this kid, you know, I saw him drilling at each of the seminars. He was just drilling the one trick that he was told to do. And then he would sit and take notes in his little notebook. I watched him take notes the entire gathering. When he wasn't tricking, he wasn't outside smoking. He wasn't, you know, doing other shit. I mean, I don't know what he's doing now, but it doesn't matter. The point is, when he was trying to put in the time that he needed to progress and get to the level where he needed to, he was doing exactly that. And that stood out to me, you know, and I really appreciate when people do that. And I would hope that kids do that a lot sooner, you know, being a little bit, I don't want to say I'm older, but being, you know, a little bit older and still tricking, and having, you know, career priorities, I can definitely look back and be like, you know, as a kid, I wish I was still living as a kid, but I love to prioritize and put time into things that I want to do, and, you know, take an approach like Levi did, and really like, you know, how do I train safely? How do I pull and learn from these people that know so much, rather than shutting them down and being, you know, envious of them and one day wanting to compete against them or whatever, you know, versus just soaking it all in and using the time efficiently.
Yeah, tricking is such a mental game. I agree. That's like such a big part of it that, more people should be doing what little Levi was doing back then. He's a killer now. So
his progression, I saw it, and you know, at gatherings after, and then I saw him the year after at Trick Hungry, you know, and the level that it increased just in that year from the things that he was doing and the things that he was spending his time on was shown.
Yeah, absolutely. But Do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap this up? I mean, I know we could talk all day about like any of this stuff, but
Yeah, absolutely. So my thought is people should be doing more front flips. Specifically, they should be landing in semi to do forward vanishes more
Yeah.
instead of just swinging
How
out of
about
semi.
I like the idea of not doing any other trick except for front flip. I think tricking should
I don't like that idea,
Extreme
but I do
front
like the
flipping.
idea of having a little bit more variety.
I actually agree that the tricking economy needs both more front flips and especially more front handsprings because well, even forward Valdezes, okay?
Ooh.
Those are pretty cool.
Yes, you're absolutely.
Would you say
right.
Faldezes?
Valdezes. We've got a young killer on our team who comes to our gym. His name is Nolan. And yeah, he's gifted and he also does a lot of forward Valdezes and his are better than mine. Like he's just incredibly good at them. And
That's
you know,
crazy.
more people should do them.
That's Dylan Berry. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Nolan.
Nolan Qua. He's like a local trigger for me. He's not like out there on Instagram really like that, but
Oh, okay. I thought I heard of him somewhere. Never mind. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you may have. I mean, he's like kind of messages Dylan and stuff like that, but he's not like, you know, he's just from Florida. But
Mhm.
yeah, no,
Just
like I
from
mean,
Florida.
but he inspires me to do things like for front handsprings and such, and I think that those are pretty underutilized.
Mhm. I agree.
So what? I mean, I have just a couple of things that I might want to add before finishing on because I did want to have a message for like at least a younger group of kids starting off and then going through college and then eventually being adults. And what do you do? What's going on? What do you do with tricking? What's your role? What's your niche? Where do you stand? And what's your place in tricking when you're an adult? But before that, I wanted to ask like Bryce and Jason, what have you guys been doing? Like, what's your thoughts on like careers at the same time having tricking? Do you think? And really, what's your thoughts on like prioritize tricking as a career versus having other careers and having tricking on the side as a hobby, as an outlet? And what do you do? Like what are you doing in your life right now?
I used to when I was much younger and I was still thinking about what I was going to do. I'm pretty settled on it now, but back then for a while I did think about potentially doing tricking as a career, and I thought about the things that would go into what it would mean to be a professional tricker. But after a little while, and this was still in high school, I realized that would just sort of take all of the fun out of it for me and take it away from being something that I do as a hobby for enjoyment. So I've always, since I had that realization, tricking has always been something that I just basically, I do for myself with the boys because it's fun to do it with the boys, but it's something that I do for my own personal pleasure. And so throughout going and doing adult stuff and getting my career, tricking is always here, something that I'm just going and doing in my backyard when I have the time and the desire. As far as what I'm up to career-wise nowadays, I'm currently in graduate school. I'm working on my PhD right now.
Great.
I'm almost done with my second semester of my first year, and I have one more qualifier to take at the end of this semester, and then I'll be able to start looking for advisors.
Wow, that's amazing. Honestly, that's really good to hear that, we got someone else on here and, all of us really, that people can probably look at and hear through this podcast and kind of relate to and be able to pick off and be like, okay, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't know what to do career-wise. Is tricking it for me? Is it not? So, I appreciate that input, and I'm sure other people listening to it would too. What about you, Jason?
Everyone always has like, I would call it slight delusions of grandeur in regards to becoming like pro or like best in the world or something. Everyone wants to be at that level. I never really gave too much consideration to like actually being like a pro tricker. I guess it's never been something that I've like wanted to do. I guess like the extent of it was like, it would be cool to be like a special guest at a gathering, and that's kind of like it. But regards to like my personal life, I work full time as a junior system admin, and basically like that kind of forces me to prioritize like certain things above tricking. But I actually kind of like wrote a lot of notes towards the bottom there about like prioritizing your priorities. And that's like regarding, okay, so I have like, you know, monthly bills that I have to pay. That means like work obviously comes first. And then I have class, which I have to do so I can, you know, progress like further in my career. So I have to do that. But then like my third priority immediately becomes tricking. And like, you know, and I express that to my loved ones, close friends. And I'm like, you know, I need this time for me because tricking is like incredibly significant to me. And like, you know, I just really try to find time, or I make time for tricking, you know?
Great. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you got amazing individuals here that, you know, obviously have or set goals in their life, you know, and kind of figure out where their priorities lie. And we're adulting, we're figuring out how tricking fits into our lifestyle and how it gives us, you know, our personalities and a lot of our life, really. And it fuels our rest of our life, like our priorities and goals. So no, that's great. I really appreciate hearing that. But also I just wanted to say, like, just basing it off what you're saying, what I've been saying, and you know what Frank was talking about, especially if there's some young listeners, you know, people who are just getting into college or even in college and trying to figure out what their role is, where tricking fits in their life. You know, highlight your goals, like figure out, what do you want? What's your end goals? I know it might be a little too soon. Maybe you're still like, hey, I'm a kid, I don't really got to worry about all that. Adulting hits kind of fast and out of nowhere pretty quickly. And you know, we have a lot of fun out of nowhere. We're like, whoa, I got all these expectations and responsibilities now. Not saying that you should pressure yourself into doing that now, but
something to keep in mind,
like,
at least.
Where does tricking fit? You know, is it gonna... Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I gotta figure out what I want to do with my life right now. I mean, no, you don't. You know, people don't figure out they want to go to med school till their 30s. I have classmates who are 35. You know, but is, you know, tricking going to be your aid, an outlet to your life, or do you use it? Do you plan to use it as a career? You know, or are you going to make a career out of it? Things to think about. But if you have a career that you really want to get into, like you wanted to be an astrophysicist your entire life, but somewhere along the way you found tricking, and God, you know, it's really cool to be the best tricker in the world. You know, kind of figure out what your priorities are. Like, are you going to be able to put in the work for that education and then use tricking on the side, like we have been able to, and kind of fuel our goals? Or are you just going to shove that out of the way and be like, yeah, I just want to be Mike, you know? And that's okay too. But I personally wanted to say that if you're focused on a career in medicine or anything else, accounting, you know, anything, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, that's okay. Like, you don't have to force yourself to be somewhere that you don't want to be, or somewhere that you didn't, you know, plan for yourself to be, or put yourself into standards that you didn't even want in the first place. You just wanted to be an astrophysicist or a teacher, a freaking teacher. You know, you wanted to be a teacher. Now, there's other things. So, like, in teaching, you could be a coach. You know, you could coach tricking. You could be a teacher and work with tricking every day. Or you could want to have that completely separate. You could want to be a school teacher and then on some days be able to get out and trick. And that's okay. That's what I want to say. It's okay to have all these things. You don't have to look at people on social media, especially, and feel like that is your end goal. And if you don't make it there, then you are not part of the tricking community, or that you're not good enough to be part of the tricking community. That's not true.
Yeah.
It could be anybody, you know, but as long as you have the love for the movement and you are contributing, even like Frank said, just by posting or just by talking about it or hanging out with your homies while they trick, more power to you. That's something that I had to also change a lot of perspective in. When I went to sessions, because I hadn't been training the same way, I would see my personal close friends who couldn't even do a hook kick, you know, when they started, and now they're doing full swing double full or double corks. And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even attempted that in like 5 years. I suck now. And all these kids that I taught are better than me. That's a terrible feeling sometimes, but it's all about perspective. You know, are you able to enjoy their enjoyment? Celebrate their celebrations, you know, and because that's part of tricking and that's part of you if you've had something to do with that. So basically going to sessions and also me being open to, you know, just sitting there and watching my homies trick and be like, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
Versus me forcing myself to get up and being like, I have to do a trick right now in order to still feel like I'm part of this crew. It's not true.
I think that's
And all
a yeah, I think that's a really beautiful point. I think that you have to remind yourself that you kind of played a part in that. Like, in terms of those students or even just people you trick with getting as good as they got, they watched you trick at some point. And they, maybe even if it was just like, oh wow, I just like the way he hook kicks, right? If it's something just as simple as that, you've already have made an impact in their lives and how they trick. So you have to look at their tricks and be like, wow, I like played a part in that, and I'm so happy for them, and I'm happy that I was able to help them get to this position or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that's really important.
And then the other side of the coin, let's say you're someone who prioritizes tricking and you have thought about careers and you know that tricking is it. You're good at it and you're naturally built for it. And dude, you're going to kill it. You're going to be Mike and Shosei one day. That's fine. What are you doing to make sure you set yourself up? Because it doesn't matter what career you get into. It's going to be a hustle at the end of the day. It's going to be work to get what it's worth. You know, if something is really worth it, then it's going to take the work, regardless. If it's tricking, if it's going to med school, if it's going to become an astrophysicist, or the next, you know, Einstein.
And it's going to come with its own benefits and related cons, especially for those people out there who are really thinking about tricking as a serious career. You're going to have to think about the sorts of things that people who want athletics as their career have to think about, which is injuries happen. And the way you make money, if you're a professional athlete, is using your body. And if you get an injury, you can't use your body anymore. And that puts you out.
Is it true?
And that can be, depending on how bad your injury is, that can be that for the rest of your life. You're not doing that anymore, and you now have to completely pivot. And so that is the one point of advice that I would want to suggest to anybody. And it's not necessarily just tricking. If you're wanting to go into professional sports of any kind, have some other skill or some other inclination of something to do, because this is just a fact. It's not because there's something wrong with being a professional athlete or wrong with athletics in general. It is a fact of the matter that sports incurs a risk of injury. And if that's your only source of income, you need to be prepared for the eventuality of injury.
Absolutely. And that's not to like shy anyone away from.
No, certainly not.
It's just to make sure that, hey, make sure to think about some of these things, you know? And like you said, have something on the side. Don't always put all your eggs in one basket, you know, like just kind of spread them out a little bit, and mainly one of them have in one basket. But example though, one of my really, really good friends, one of my best friends, basically my brother. I don't know if you guys know Corey Dunson. Bryce, you might have met him.
Yes,
I know Corey.
Yeah, mostly everybody knows him. But he moved down to Atlanta for stunts a while ago, and around the same time I was gearing towards taking my MCAT and, you know, starting med school. So really a few years after that, when I started med school, is when we would talk daily, and we still do. We would talk about, you know, what we've been doing, what I've been doing, what he's been doing. And it's so crazy how many things lined up in similarities. Obviously not in the same exact manner, but how much work I had to do, sometimes how much shit I was taking, sometimes how I failed and had to get back up. And he was telling me about similar experiences in physical form, some of mine in mental form. And so it doesn't matter what it is, the trials and tribulations and the work is going to be there. You have to choose what you want to do, you know? And then if tricking is your end all be all, then what's the one thing on the side that you do that's not tricking that fuels your life as well? You know, maybe it's biking, maybe it's painting, maybe it's doing actual work or teaching or whatever, you know? So some things to think about. And then once again, if tricking is end all be all, then what are you doing to set yourself up? What are you doing to hustle? What connections are you making? And in what way are you strengthening your body to prevent what Bryce said could happen, you know? Yeah. So those are some things to think about. But I mainly just wanted to say that if there's something else that you want to prioritize in your life, and you are under the pressure of your community, of your friends, to be the best tricker in the world or at the same level as them or better than them, you can let go of that. Focus on what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on, if that means, for me personally, getting out, doing a few reversos, maybe some spiders, maybe just doing cork swing, cork double leg,
Mm-hmm.
and coming inside being like, wow, I had a session today. I got a lot of work to do tonight and tomorrow. Moving on, you know? Or is it that my competition's coming up on Friday, at Hooked? Well, how did I set myself up? What am I going to be doing? And what are my later connections to lead me into a career in tricking?
Mm-hmm.
So some things to balance out, way to think about. Mainly, I just wanted to say it's okay, to think about other things as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Beautifully said. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed making this episode. I think we made a lot of cool connections that I didn't even make before. So thank you for that, Ayzee. And yeah, thank you for being on.
Yeah, I thought you had some pretty insightful and well-spoken opinions, Ayzee. Thank you so much for your contributions today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciated talking to you guys. You guys brought a lot of things that made me think about a lot too. And also, tricking is movement is life.
Mm-hmm.
Movement is not tricking, or sorry, life is tricking for a lot of us, and I know we hold that. But really, movement is life. When we define a cell as alive, we look for its movement. We look for its lifeness.
Mm-hmm.
And you getting out and doing even the littlest bit of movement is you living.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what matters.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. We'll catch you guys later.